I'm often asked how long it takes me to come up with one of my daily videos. Once the script is done, it doesn't take more than like 10 hours to create and record. It's the research phase that takes the most time. I don't think people understand how much work that takes. So I wanted to kind of pull back the curtain and give everyone a little sneak peek. If you go to PubMed.gov, where you can access the database of the National Library of Medicine, the largest medical library in the world, you can search for topics like diet or nutrition, and you'll see that there's about 100,000 papers published every year in the field of nutrition in the scientific medical literature. That's more than 200 studies a day. I can't read 200 studies a day, but 20 people could read 200 studies a day. That's why I hired 19 researchers to help me plow through the literature so you don't have to. And that's in addition to an army of volunteers downloading and categorizing nearly 2,000 articles a week. I don't want to miss a single important paper. Then the next step is to look for what I call anchor articles. These are the new studies around which I construct the videos. I'm looking for novelty, practicality, and engagement. Is it groundbreaking? If it's just another study showing broccoli is good for you, unless there's some new insight, probably won't make the cut. Is it practical? Is there some actionable information that can be used to make real-world kitchen or grocery store decisions? Right? Who cares if there's some new whortleberry with medicinal properties that can only be foraged wild in the Siberian tundra or something? Right? And finally, is there a way to make it interesting? That's actually probably the greatest limiting factor. There's lots of trailblazing new science with hands-on implications, but unless I can find a way to make it captivating, to add humor or intrigue or solve some mystery, sadly, it just kind of goes by the wayside. That's why we need like 10 different sites like this, so we can, I can just pass those papers along and be like, you try to make that interesting. Right? Once I have the anchor, then the real work begins. Just because something is published in the peer-reviewed medical literature doesn't mean it's true. There are studies funded by the National Confectioners Association that finds that candy is just dandy. Studies covertly funded by Coca-Cola or the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a flawed study, but you have to give it that extra level of scrutiny. You always have to follow the money. Then you have to put the study in context. For all I know, that new study is some outlier or fluke. Maybe there's 10 other studies out there that showed the exact opposite. How else can we make life or death decisions for ourselves and our families, but by the best available balance of evidence? Right? That's why every new study needs to be placed into context. Easier said than done. For example, let's say this paper lands in my inbox arguing that fish oil increases the risk of cancer. Now, I could just make a video about it, just laying out the facts. There was this paper published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal that presented evidence that taking fish oil increases the risk of cancer. Here's the paper, here's the link to download the paper, here's all the evidence they present in black and white, right in front of you. Here's their reasoning, their graphs, their charts, their diagrams. This is the peer-reviewed medical literature, people. Done. No, that's not good enough. That doesn't answer the most important question of all. Is it actually true? For all we know, this guy is just cherry-picking studies to fit some agenda. It's not enough for us to just stick to the peer-reviewed science. I want everything on nutritionfacts.org to reflect the best available balance of evidence. Okay. So how do I figure that out? Well, even if his arguments make sense based on the evidence he provides, you have to make sure he's interpreting the evidence he cites correctly. To do that, you have to pull all the 76 sources he cites to make sure he's not misquoting anything. And what if each of those 76 papers cites 76 other papers? And even if he correctly cited those 76 papers, what about all the papers he didn't cite? There have been more than 2,000 papers published on fish oil and cancer. And look, this paper was published back in 2013. What about the papers that have been published subsequently that cited this particular paper? And that's just one paper for one video, right? You'll be glad you did your due diligence, though, because then you'd realize, hey, that fish oil paper got retracted. Why? because the researcher evidently failed to disclose he owned his own supplement company, which sold a competing oil supplement. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean something's amiss, but definitely requires additional scrutiny. So anyways, bottom line, ideally, we do a comprehensive search of the available literature to place any particular paper in context, while also going backwards and forwards in time to checking all the sources they cite and all the sources that cited them. And then we do that anytime a paper is published on nutrition, which, again, happens a mere 100,000 times a year. Now, hopefully you can appreciate why we had to bring on 19 researchers. How can we afford to do that, though? I don't take any salary or compensation. We have nearly 200 active volunteers who also donate their time, but we also have 7 paid operations staff, tech, design, development, social media, volunteer coordination. Right? How can we afford to pay 24 salaries plus the server costs and everything else? You. NutritionFacts.org is a 501c3 nonprofit charity that exists exclusively on donations from individuals like you. It's like a Wikipedia model of just accepting donations from users who appreciate the content, who appreciate what we're doing. We reach so many millions of people that if 1 in 1,000 makes a small contribution, we're able to continue to thrive. So if you feel like my work has enriched your life, please consider supporting us by making a tax-deductible, one-time or even better, monthly donation. Regardless, even if you never give a penny, everything on the website is and will always be free for all time. There's no members-only area where you can get additional life-saving information for a price. There are no advertisements of any kind. We don't accept corporate sponsorships. Site's strictly non-commercial. There's no line of Dr. Greger's brand snake oil wonder supplements. Even all the money I get from my books and DVDs all goes straight back into the site. It's just a public service for those hungry for evidence-based nutrition.